Okay, so to start my lemon, ginger, and pepper cake, I just need to grease and flour my Heritage cake pan. So I just thought I'd show you that. It does have some very intricate bits to it. This one isn't actually too bad, as some of the other ones do have lots of nice little bits. They turn out very, very well, so no need to worry. I'm just using some Crisco and a pastry brush. And all I'm going to do is just brush the Crisco onto the tin. You can use a paper towel, you can use your fingers, you can use a piece of parchment, you can do this however you want. I find with the Nordic Ware tins that a pastry brush works quite well, especially when you're doing some of the very intricate detailed ones, because I find it easier to get the brush into all the little nooks and crannies to make sure that you've got all of them coated with your shortening. So I'm just going to put all the shortening on here. Alright, there we go. So my tin is now all greased, and this recipe calls for it to be lined with some breadcrumbs, some dry breadcrumbs. So I'm just going to put a couple of tablespoons inside and tap that around. So normally you do this with flour. You can also do it with sugar or anything like that. Depends on the recipe. But if they say grease and flour, then generally just grease and flour unless you're trying something slightly different. But this one does call for some breadcrumbs. So I'll just pop some more in there. And just make sure you've got it all along that middle bit as well. You don't want it to stick to the tube bit. And then you just tap it around sort of like that to get all of it nicely covered. And then just tap out any excess. And so then you have a nicely greased and, in this case, breadcrumbed pan. So my pan is now all ready to go. I'll get the rest of my ingredients ready to go and we'll start making the cake. Okay, just to quickly run through the ingredients. We've got some flour, some sugar, buttermilk. This recipe calls for some white pepper, baking soda, baking powder, eggs, butter, lemon zest, fresh grated ginger, and some fresh lemon juice. The cake we'll do first, and then there's a little glaze that goes on it once it comes out of the oven, so we'll do that after we make the cake. So I'll get the mixer set up and we'll start making the cake. Alright, so I've got my mixer set up. I've got my oven preheated to 325 Fahrenheit. In my mixer bowl I've got 2 sticks of butter, or a cup of butter. To that I'm going to add a cup of sugar and another 3/4 of a cup of sugar. There we go. And then we're just going to fit that with the paddle attachment. I like to use the one with the little flex edge on it because it works quite well at scraping down the side of the bowl. And we'll just blend that together. Alright, that's light and fluffy now. Now I need to add my 3 eggs, one at a time. Okay, and now in a medium bowl I have whisked together already the flour, so 3 cups of flour, 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder, and the sort of 1 to 2 teaspoons of white ground pepper. It depends on how sort of peppery you want yours. So I've done a teaspoon and a half in mine. And then I also have a cup of buttermilk. And so now I'm going to alternate adding the flour with the buttermilk and then back and forth until that's all mixed in. So we'll just dump in about 1/3 of the flour and turn that on low. And I'm just going to pour in half of my buttermilk. And then another 1/3 of the flour, or a little bit more than 1/3 probably. And the rest of my buttermilk. And then the last little bit of my flour. There we go, that's all nice mixed in. I'm going to scrape down my bowl quickly. There we are, and then in my little dish here I have my 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of lemon zest, and 2 teaspoons of freshly grated ginger. So I'm just going to add that into this mix and stir that in just on a low setting. Alright, so that's my batter ready to go. So I'll grab the tin that we've greased and breadcrumbed and we'll pour that in. Okay, so that's the tin that we prepared earlier that I've done. So I'm just going to scrape in my batter. And then this gets baked at the 375 Fahrenheit for about, well, probably about 80 minutes, so 75-80 minutes. Do keep an eye on it, depending on your oven, but it does take quite a long time to bake. It's a lot of batter, and it's a nice big cake. So even with the hole in the middle, which will give you that lovely even cook all the way through, it's still going to take a little while. So make sure you leave enough time in the day to do that. And then I will come back and show you the glaze that goes on the top when this comes out nice and warm. So that's my tin and my cake batter all ready to go. I'll pop that in my oven and come back to do the glaze. Alright, so to make the glaze, all we're going to do is use the leftover lemon juice from the lemons, and that can be, it should be about 1/3 of a cup. I had 1/2 cup left, so I'm actually just going to use the whole 1/2 cup. And then to that I'm going to add 1/2 cup of sugar. So just pop that in, and that's actually your glaze. So very, very simple. So while the cake is baking in the oven, I'm just going to leave this. It'll dissolve, the lemon juice will dissolve the sugar naturally. And then when the cake comes out of the oven, once we turn it out, then you can we'll just brush this over the top of it, and it gives it a lovely sweet lemony sort of glaze over the top. But you don't need to melt this with the on the stove or anything like that. The lemon juice will slowly dissolve the sugar. So every once in a while give it a quick stir, and it'll be ready to go when the cake comes out of the oven. So I'll come back when the cake's ready to come out of the oven. Alright, so this is my cake out of the oven. I have let it cool for 10 minutes in the tin, and now I need to turn it onto the wire rack, and then we'll put the wire rack over a baking sheet so that we can brush on our glaze and not worry about it making too much of a mess. So to have this sit flat, what I've done is I've actually already cut this, but I've just taken a serrated knife and used the pan as a guide and then just cut flat across. If your knife's not long enough, the middle bit where you had the hole, you can just use that as your guide and go all the way around. And so you can just see that this just lifts off like that then. And then you get to try some bits before everyone else, which is quite yum. And so now we want to turn this out onto our baking tray, or sorry, cooling rack. So I'm going to put the cooling rack on top. And now the tin is still very hot because we've only let it dry or cool for 10 minutes. So I'm going to flip it out like this using a tea towel. We'll give it a little tap, pull my tea towel out, and then I'm going to use it to lift my tin off. And there we go. And that is what your cake looks like. So nice and evenly cooked. Came out very easily. Nothing stuck to the pan. You can see just there. So everything came out nice and easy. So as I said, we're just going to transfer this onto a little tray like that, so it doesn't make too much of a mess. And then this is the sugar and the lemon juice that was just dissolving and mixing together while the cake was cooking. So I've got a pastry brush, and I'm just going to dip this in, and while the cake is still warm, because it'll absorb more of this lovely glaze, you just want to brush it all over the cake. And any excess will just drip into the tray below, which is why we've popped it under there. Make sure you get both sides of each of these. So I'm just going to continue to do that to the whole cake. So there you are. That is your finished heritage cake pan using the recipe that comes with it, the lemon, ginger, and pepper cake. It looks absolutely fantastic. It smells absolutely fantastic. So now from here, now that you've covered it with your glaze, you want to let it cool completely at room temperature and then go ahead and eat it. It'll be lovely as is. You put lots of syrup in, so it should be nice and moist, or you can add ice cream or anything like that that you like, some fresh fruit even. Enjoy the recipe. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed my video, please do give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, please post those below. I'll post the recipe below. And please subscribe to see what else I'm up to. Thanks again for watching.